Welcome to episode 20 of the Serial Chillers podcast, brought to you by Beer Savage. I am your host, Jesse, and thank you guys all so much for listening, and thank you for letting me take a break. Today we've got two guests, both returning, both family members of mine. We bring back my mom, who last time brought us Lacey Peterson. Thank you, Cheyenne. She's going to be giving us Susan Smith today. Clayton comes back with a story this time and gives us a great, nice, condensed version of the John Dupont story. Don't forget to rate and review and subscribe if you're an iTunes user. Use promo code SerialChillers at beersavage.com for 20% off your entire purchase. And as usual, sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 20 of the Serial Chillers podcast. All right, you guys ready?
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. Well, then welcome to episode 20 of the Serial Chillers podcast. Episode 20 of 1 million. I always need to make sure we clear that up. Okay, so today, two in-studio guests. I have, to my left, returning once more, my younger brother, Clayton. Welcome back, Clayton.
Yep, I'm here.
Yep, he's here. And straight across, returning once more, I believe she was called a bloody legend by an Australian listener, my mom, or my mum.
Hello.
Yeah. So they are back, and they are going to be competing against one another this time.
I'm going to kick his ass.
And we'll see if... Did you win last time, Shy?
No,
Danny beat you. All right. Shy's looking for her first win. I believe Dustin beat Clayton last time. I got two family members here looking for a W. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the show. Each week I sit down with old friends, new friends, good friends, and bad friends to tell the story of an infamous serial killer. Throughout the show, you guys will chime in on my story and have stories of your own that are true crime, dark, creepy, unsolved, or otherwise mysterious. Here is how the game works. There will be several questions throughout the episode that will be worth somewhere between 250 and infinity points. There will be multiple choice. Some you will have to stab at. Some only the closest to the answer is going to get points at all. All multiple choice questions are able to be stabbed at for bonus points, but if you take a stab, that is your only guess. Lastly, if you have questions about questions, make sure to ask your questions, because I cannot answer questions about questions if you never asked questions. Any question?
Not right now.
Well, then welcome to and let's play the Serial Chillers podcast. Today's serial killer, tell me, have you guys heard of Dennis Lynn Rader?
Oh, yeah.
Clayton has heard of Dennis Rader.
I have not.
Clayton is feeling good about his chances so far. Are you feeling good then, little bro?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's probably watched like documentaries and read everything.
BTK.
Hold on to your info. Question number 1. In what year is Dennis Rader born? The closest to the answer is going to get 250 points. You guys got answers?
I got an answer.
All right, let's see what he got, Clayton. Clayton says 53. Shy says 71. On March 9th, 1945, Clayton gets the 250 points. Dennis Lynn Rader is born in Kansas. Though he's born... What's that?
250?
Yep, 250. Though he is born in Pittsburgh, Kansas, he grew up in Wichita. He is the oldest of 4 sons to Dorothy Mae Rader and William Elvin Rader. According to many reports, including his own confessions, he tortured animals as a child. He hung cats. That was his thing. He liked to strangle cats. And there's a thing called the McDonald Triad. Are you guys aware? So it's like a thing you look at, or you don't look at it. People look at it. It's the... essentially the signs of a serial killer. So the McDonald Triad is bedwetting, small animal torture, and pyromania. So those 3 things, if I'm not mistaken, those are the 3 that make up the McDonald Triad. So this is, I don't know if there's any sign of bedwetting or
For some reason, I thought it had something to do with McDonald's, the restaurant.
It's way less delicious than that.
I guess so.
So he also, at a young age, has sexual fetish for women's underwear. This is something that he would admit later, so nobody really knew this about him as a child. As a 12-year-old in 1957, he is confirmed in the Zion Lutheran Church. So he is a part of the Zions. In 1960, he's now 15. He saves the life of a fellow Boy Scout on a canoe trip in Arkansas. The boy fell into the water, and Dennis swam him over to the side. So, kind of a hero at an early age.
That moment.
And this is kind of like last episode where a lot of times, I like to break up the shows by early life and then crimes and then, and then like a court trial. Similar to last episode, this isn't really possible because there's not a whole lot about his childhood that you get. I don't know that it was uneventful or if it's just not well documented, but there's not a whole lot about young Dennis Lynn Rader out there. So that's 15 at 18. He graduates Wichita Heights Valley Center High School. Brings us to question number 2. What did he do after high school? You can stab for 1,000 points, or I have multiple choice for you.
Multiple choice, please.
Shy is going to wait for the multiple choice. Clayton, you want to take the stab at what he does after high school?
Yeah, I will. I think I know.
Okay.
Do I write that down?
Yep, please do. Clayton's going for the stab, which means you won't get a multiple choice option if you lose it. All right, this is for 1,000 points if Clayton's got it. Shy, the multiple choice options are: did he go part-time at a grocery store, the Army, the Air Force, or did he become a plumber? Don't erase anything over there. Go ahead, Shy. Part-time grocery store, Army, Air Force, plumber.
I'm torn between B and D.
Army and plumber?
Yeah. Let me see. I'm going to say...
You can just say it. You don't have to write it down.
I'm going to say B.
Shy says, Army, what do you got over there, Clayton? He joined the military. So, be more specific. Cheyenne guessed Army. And you're going to get 500 if you're right on it. Because you were close. Need more specific. Still got a chance to double the points if you're right. Clayton's saying Air Force. Clayton's going to get the 500. Shy, you're going to miss out on this one. Clayton, he's on it. Clayton does know a little bit about BTK, I think. This is the first time I think someone's landed and just been like, yeah, I know the shit out of this guy. Let's do this.
Okay, what is BTK?
You know what? I gave away the answer to a question. So I'm just going to give you the points when we get there because it's so hard to no one calls him Dennis Rader. BTK was his nickname. So that's one of the questions. It's on here, but Clay already gave you the answer too earlier. We'll let you find out what it stands for.
Okay. I just thought I was, out of the loop of...
So we're giving Clayton 500
and
for that one. And Shy gets a goose egg once more. It is 750-0. Clayton looking good for his first win so far.
Yeah, well, next time I'm going to find out who you're doing, and I'm going to research them.
In 1966, Dennis Rader, or he will be future known as BTK, enlists in the United States Air Force as a mechanic in the Vietnam War. He reached the rank of sergeant and received 3 medals during his military career. His tour of duty included tours in Korea, Turkey, Greece, and Okinawa.
He sounds like a stand-up guy to me.
I think that...
I'm sitting here thinking that he went through high school, he's in the military, he's a sergeant, he gets these awards. What screws him up?
Well, we already talked about a couple things that he did as a kid, but
as
other
a kid,
than that, there's not a lot. So maybe what's happened is going to happen to him has already happened to him. Or maybe there is something, I guess. Let's look on here. For whatever reason, almost everything of note mentions that in August of 66, he was a best man at his friend John Davis's wedding. It's like some childhood friend of his. It bears no significance really on his life, but hey, what a cool story that guy has that BTK was his best man. In 67, February, he was stationed at Brookley Air Force Base in Mobile, Alabama. In February of 68, he's moved and stationed at Kadena Air Base in Okinawa. In August of 1970, he leaves active duty and enters the reserves. And in June of 72, he finishes reserve duty of the Air Force and he is discharged as that rank of sergeant. From 70 to 73, he'll work in the meat department for Leakers IGA in Park City, where his mother was a bookkeeper. So it's a grocery store. His mom's the bookkeeper there. He did a little butchering, some wrapping, some cleaning up, but he worked at the meat department of a grocery store. So still kind of fits the stand-up guy narrative.
Yeah,
it's not,
he's got a job.
He's got a
productive member of society.
Finished his...
I don't know. Butchers always seem like weird people to me.
You're going to get the hate from butchers.
Yeah, don't get me off the butcher audience, bro. In 1974, he would get a job with ADT Security Systems. He would keep this job through 1988. They nicknamed him the Blue Book Man because of his memory for regulations in the laws of security systems. And it said throughout the job, he would often install alarms and cameras for people who were afraid of the crimes that he is committing.
Awesome.
It's almost like he was like, oh man, boost up business a little bit here. Better start killing some people. Good segue, because right now we're going to talk about him killing some people. So we're all ready to question number 3. He's going to claim his first victim or victims right now. By the end of it all, how many total will he have? There is a multiple choice option, so you got to be exact if you're going to stab at it.
Multiple choice.
Both you guys are going multiple choice. Is it A, 19, B, 10, C, 26, or D, 5? 19, 10, 26, or 5? 250 points on the multiple choice. Shy looking to get on the board. Clayton looking to extend the lead. What do we got? Clayton says 26. Shy says 26. All right. You guys both get 0 together. Congratulations. So since you didn't get it right, I'm going to just go on down, tell you guys you didn't get it right, and we'll get to that number. That was me, actually.
Oh, okay.
We'll get to that number when we get to that number. You guys were on the same wavelength, though, so that's good.
Well, my number was 32, so when you didn't say anything higher than that, I was going high as you.
How many do you think it is since it's not 26?
19.
I think 19. I think it was a high number for some reason.
All right. On January 15th, 1974, he's 28 years old, which is actually kind of oddly the kind of a peaking age for
really?
For serial killers to begin.
What is it?
28.
Oh.
So psychopathy normally psychopathy starts taking place somewhere between, I think it's 18 and 22, and serial killers usually take time to like a serial killer doesn't just go, today I begin killing. It's usually it's rarely an impulsive thing. Not to say that it's hasn't
probably
ever been
festered in their life, and they've
some people have a fetish or something they have to,
and they just feed on it for all the years until they can't hold it in anymore.
So on January 15th, 1974, Dennis Rader claims his first victims. It's a family.
A family?
Joseph Otero was 35. His wife, Julie Otero, was 34. Their son, Joseph Otero Jr., was 9. And Josephine Otero was 11. Rader, someone was going in or out. He came in with him and pulled a gun on the whole family. If you want to see something crazy, you can watch a 45-minute play-by-play by him in court, his full confession. They say, okay, on count 1, and he tells you, okay, I went in and I did this and I did this,
so he
and I went back and
everything.
We'll kind of get into it a little later, but it's bone chilling. So he claims his first victims. The ankles and wrists of Joseph Otero, the father, had been bound. His wife, Julie Otero, was also bound by her ankles and wrists and was lying on the bed with her mouth gagged. Joseph Otero, the 9-year-old son, had been bound in the same fashion with 3 hoods covering his head and face. So what he would do was he'd put a plastic bag over you, tie a thing around your neck, put a pillowcase over that, and tie another thing so you couldn't rip through the plastic bag if you happened to get through.
Is that how they died? Suffocation?
He was very cowardly. He tried manual strangulation a lot. In his confession for this, he talks about, I had never manually strangled somebody. I didn't realize how long it takes and how much pressure you have to apply. So he kind of got there and wasn't really able to do what he thought he was going to do. So he would choke them out and think they were dead, and he would come back and they'd be waking up, and he couldn't completely get it done. So wife dies, the husband dies, the son dies, and they find Josephine downstairs, who was gagged, partially naked, and hanging from a pipe. He'd tied a cord around her neck and hung her from a pipe in the basement. It was said that Rader would raise her up as she began to lose consciousness. He would lower her down so she can gain air and start over again. And while he was doing this, he was masturbating the entire time.
So it wasn't sexual with the people?
There are two, I believe. There may be more because I'm not a serial killer expert. I just like the stories. But there are product killers and there are process killers. A product killer wants the body. They want the lifeless toy, the thing that won't talk back, the thing that won't tell them no. He's much more of a process killer. It's about the torture, about the slow death, about the control, about the, he got off on watching her almost die and bring her back.
He had that power to bring her back.
And that was everything to him. Like he needed that.
Oh God, that's sick.
So, all had died by strangulation by cords from a Venetian blind not found at the house. The crime was committed in the morning around 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. The telephone lines leading to the house were cut, and there was evidence of no forced entry. He had worked with Julie Otero, the mother at the Coleman factory that he worked at one time. So, kind of crazy. Sorry.
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, starting a little heavy. Start with a family, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that takes a lot to subdue two adults and...
So that went during his confession. He just kind of talked about it. It was just about the gun. He had a gun pulled. And his thing was that he would lull people into a sense of, he would say, like, I have a sexual problem. I'm not here to kill you. But I am here to rape you. Let me just tie you up and get it over with. And,
And then once he's got him tied up,
he's in control. Question number 4 is the nickname one. So we're going to give you both
BTK,
250 points on this one. And it stands for bind them, torture them, kill them. BTK. Yeah. So that's rough. You guys will both get 250 for that one. Congratulations.
Thank you. That was a really hard one.
Clay is up 1,000 to 250. So, in October of 1974, 3 men were arrested and admitted to the Otero killings. This seemed to upset BTK. The local newspaper, the Wichita Eagle, received a phone call referring journalists to an engineering book in a local library. When the book was located, they found a note inside, apparently written by BTK, claiming responsibility for the Otero killings, giving details that only the killer would know.
Why would someone confess to it?
That's part of the game. He wants if he needs this much control, and now he's thinking like, I did this, and someone's taking credit for it. Absolutely not. So he's not walking up to him and saying, "Here, take me. It was me."
He just wants to put it up there.
Goes and leaves a book and a note in a library and lets the newspaper know, not the police. He's very, very, very narcissistic. It's gonna get even worse. On April 4th, 1974, Catherine Bright, who was 20, and her brother Kevin walked into an intruder in Catherine's residence. Dennis forced Kevin to tie his sister to a chair, then took Kevin into another room where he was bound and gagged. BTK then attempted to strangle him, and Kevin would lose consciousness. Kevin resists, and they get into a little fight, and BTK shoots Kevin in the head. Kevin was only winged by the bullet. Dennis thought he killed him, so he fell to the ground. And when Kevin kind of regains his consciousness, he hears his sister struggling in the other room and manages to get free from whatever remaining ties that Dennis had put on him. He escapes out, and Dennis has his sister Catherine tied up, so he shoots him again in the head, and he falls to the ground, and he thinks, finally. So he stabs Catherine 3 times in the abdomen, which is not his style at all. He's lost control, and he knows it. And he hears the front door open, and again, going back to his confession, he says that he thought the police were there. He had been caught. Like, he heard the front door open, but he turned around to look, and he saw Kevin just down the street. He had got out. He'd been shot in the head twice, and he was getting away. Can you imagine that, though? If you and your sister were being attacked and you tried to save her twice and got shot in the head twice and then you knew the best thing to do was you just had to run out of the house or you were both going to die. I don't know. That's pretty tough to imagine. But she also had marks around her neck, presumably from where he attempted to strangle her. But he probably just lost his cool. And Catherine Bright also worked at the Coleman factory with him in his earlier days. So in July of 1975, his son Brian is born. So at 30, he's got his son Brian. In March of 77, Shirley Vian was 26. She was discovered dead with her hands and feet bound and bagged over her head. BTK's signature cord was wrapped around her neck, and he had locked her 3 children in a bathroom. Her 3 children were unharmed, apparently due to a phone call that panicked him. BTK left the scene without harming the children. During his courtroom admission, he says that if this one was a random and he felt like he lost control, had he have not lost control, he would have killed all of the children. On December 9th, 1977, he was trolling an area in he was trolling an area in Wichita and saw Nancy Fox and wrote her down on a list of potential victims. So he talks about this a lot, how he goes trolling, he goes patrolling for potential victims.
Just
and
like
he would,
where?
in his
Anywhere?
hometown. Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
just
he had
walk-
like kind of an area, but he would,
Okay.
find people where he can start figuring out their routines and seeing what they're doing and kind of peg potential victims. He called it a hit kit. He had a bag that was full of like ropes and tape and knives.
So he was
and
always
guns
ready.
And well, no, that was just it. Is that he meticulously planned it out, but he had this kit that
okay.
he would go and he knew the things that he was going to do. And we'll see. He kind of gets a little sloppier as they go. And there's like this classic Ted Bundy quote where he says, "The first time you commit a murder, you plan out every single detail. By the 7th time you murdered somebody, you keep forgetting where you put the tire iron." So it's kind of like that, they start getting a little, well, I don't know that it's definitely not the case with all of them, but they begin to get sloppy or they begin to get overconfident or whatever it is. So we'll see if that's the case with him. So he breaks into her house, tells her the same line he's used before, that he's got a sexual problem and he needs to have sex with her. This freaks her out a lot, so he comforts her. They kind of sit together for a while, he says, like maybe a couple hours comforting her. He like lets her have a cigarette. She uses the bathroom one more time. She essentially says like, "Let's get this over with so I can just call the cops once you leave." And he says like, "Yeah, fine." So he goes in there, he ties her up and strangles her to death with a belt. So the body's discovered and 911 is called. Question number 5, who called the Nancy Fox murder into the police? It is stab for 1,000, multiple choice, 250.
Stab for 1,000.
Okay, write it down.
I'll do multiple choice.
Clayton's going to wait for the multiple choice. Is it A? Oh, you got your answer down, Shay? Mm-hmm. Is it A, a neighbor who overheard? B, Nancy's mother? C, Nancy's father? Or D, BTK himself? Shy literally wrote BTK himself.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go for that too.
Clayton's going D, BTK himself. And yes, indeed, the phone call was made by BTK himself. Shy's going to score 1,000 on the stab. She is feeling extra good about that. Clayton does still get 250 redemption.
That's fine.
So
He just seems like that cocky type of guy that be like, yeah, I just killed someone.
what that does for you, Shy, is ties the game up at 1250 apiece. Clayton letting it slip away.
Going down.
Even better for you guys, I have that clip for you. So, remember, we're talking 1975 here. Take it with a grain of salt. This is a phone call recorded over 911 40 years ago.
Dispatcher? Yes, you will find a homicide at 843 South Pershing. Nancy Fox. I'm sorry, sir, I can't understand you. What is the address? 843 South Pershing. That is correct.
Did you guys make that out?
I did.
I
I'd
heard
like to
the
report.
last few words.
I would like to report a homicide at
at
843
3.
West Pershing, Nancy Fox. So he calls, gives the address and her name. So, something funny about this, the murder of 25-year-old Nancy Fox was phoned into investigators by BTK himself. Police arrived at the scene very soon after the call. 2 officers see that the back window has been smashed and the phone line has been cut. They knew what they found, and they were not mistaken. The guy said, one of the cops that was there who found that body said that when they saw the smashed window and they had heard the phone call and they saw the cut lines, they looked at each other and said,
BTK.
they looked at each other and said, there's a body in here. There's no way there's not. And they went in and they found the body of Nancy Fox.
Oh, because at that point they didn't know about BTK.
Yeah, they're not sure that.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not connecting anything quite
Okay.
yet. Right. So, you know what? He sent in the letter. Yes, he's at least taken first steps in saying,
they
like,
don't-
look at me.
They
yeah,
don't
so
have that
far.
correlation of
right.
all. Okay.
So, they, after not a lot of clues at the scene, besides a little bit of semen they found balled up in a negligee. I should mention, too, that there was semen found near the girl that he hung, the 11-year-old that he hung the first time, too. So when we say it's a sexual fantasy and it's fulfilling it, I mean, like, it's fulfilling it for him. So he's leaving DNA behind. We're talking mid-70s. This is not even a thing, but they know that they have something of the killers. Maybe that was the one thing that I noticed about a lot of like early cops is that they had the foresight to know that like one day
One
this
day
is
that's
going
going to be able to tell who that sucker was.
So they start to focus on the phone call. The city of Wichita was actually implementing something new that we know today as caller ID. So when Dennis Rader called, there was an officer at the payphone within 2 minutes, but BTK was already gone. It was too late.
Wow.
So,
Fast.
yeah, we start to see how calculated he is. You know, it's 2 minutes and he's nowhere to be found by the police. So a little over a month later, in January of 1978, BTK mailed a letter to the Wichita Eagle containing a poem about Shirley Vian called Shirley Locks. In it, he also mentions Nancy Fox and how he murdered her. Apparently, there were also like some sketches and other little things. In February, he writes another letter to a television station, KAKE-TV or Cake TV, announcing his victim count so far to be 7. He blamed his crimes on a demon and something he called Factor X. It's that real shit, though. And then in this letter, he asks, quote, "How many more people do I have to kill before I start getting some publicity?" End quote. So kind of something we talked about a little earlier, right? Was his need for attention and publicity. So it also contained graphic drawings of Nancy's body and how it would have been found, and a poem called "Oh, Death to Nancy." It also says in this letter he would have killed Shirley Vian's children were he not interrupted. It was after this that the police decided to let the city of Wichita know that there was a serial killer on the loose. In the press conference, they aimed for public safety to let people know about the killer. So 7 are dead. They felt like after the first letter, the police chief in a lot of the documentaries, they said he felt a lot of guilt for not putting out that there was a serial killer out there because Nancy Fox ends up getting killed after they're pretty sure that there's someone out there. So they finally decide that they're going to go out and they're going to tell the world. So like I said, the number one thing was for public safety. Everybody knows now there is a killer out there. But also, and I found this very weird, Clayton, you'll like this. During this press conference, they knew he'd be watching. Like, this is totally his style.
He would be there or watching on TV?
Watching on TV. It was during the news. It was like a press conference that like the newscaster was asking the chief of police. So during the newscast, they flip one frame of his own sketch and they write the words, "And now call the chief," hoping that he would get that subliminal message and call the chief of police. Mm-hmm. He didn't. It was kind of silly idea, but there was some science behind it at the time that has since been debunked, that you could drop one frame in and subliminally, drop a message to somebody. Maybe it did work and he just doesn't remember it. It was so good, he missed it. So, kind of a weird start to everything, but now he's the serial killer status. He obtained it technically after his first kill, which you might have called a spree kill, but we're into it now. He's a serial killer.
Absolutely.
The city of Wichita, Kansas knows. He is 34 years old, and on April 28th, 1979, he sends a letter to Anna Williams, who is 63, in which he had also included one of her scarves, apparently stolen from her own home, telling her to be glad she did not come home because he had been waiting for her inside her house all night. She normally went bowling on these Tuesday nights, and BTK had noted this pattern and broken in while she was gone and waited for her to come home alone on that night.
And she didn't come home.
The phone lines were cut, and he was hiding in a closet for hours. This night, Anna decided to stay with her daughter and stay the night over there, which would lead to the poem and pictures drawn of what he planned to do to her. So he wrote this poem and drew. I couldn't find the pictures of what he planned to do to her, and everybody says like they're horrendous. I'm not going to describe them like in all the documentaries.
Yeah.
You guys want to hear what a great poet he was?
I'm just shocked that he's so... Hey,
brash.
I was going to kill you. Yeah, let's hear the poetry.
'Twas a perfect plan of deviant pleasure so bold on that spring night, my inner feeling hot with propension of a new awakening season, worn, wet with inner fear and rapture, my pleasure of entanglement like new vines at night. Oh, Anna, why didn't you appear? Drop of fear, fresh spring rain would roll down from your nakedness to scent to lofty fever that burns within. In that small world of longing, fear, rapture, and desperation, the game we play fall on devil's ears. Fantasy spring forth, mounts to storm, fury, then winter clam at the end. Oh, Anna, why didn't you appear alone? Now in another time span I lay with sweet enrapture garments across most private thought. Bed of spring, moist grass, clean before the sun, enslaved with control, warm, wind scenting the air, sunlight, sparkle, tears in eyes so deep and clear. Alone again I trod and pass in memories of mirrors and ponder why, for number 8 was not. Oh, Anna, why didn't you appear?
Very wordy guy.
To me, this is the scariest part, is that he laid in wait for hours, he broke into her apart, and he is the shittiest poet that has ever existed of all time. It sucks.
Super sappy.
Okay. I was hoping that I wasn't supposed to be like, wow, that was awesome.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
Okay.
So we're actually going to take a break on that. We'll
Okay.
come back with Shy's story. You ready?
I'm ready.
Perfect. And come back or I'll kill you.
Hey, this is Sarah, Sam, and Casey from Just Another Murder Podcast.
We are 3 Aussie ladies chatting about murder and making funny jokes.
More like bad jokes.
Inappropriate jokes.
Sorry.
Go listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us on Insta, Twitter, and Facebook. Okay.
Bye.
Gotcha.
See ya.
Bye.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Serial Chillers podcast. I am your host, Jesse, and I am still here in studio with my brother, Clayton, and my mom, Shy.
Hello, hello, hello.
We are going to listen to Shy tell us a little story here. She always brings us the most uplifting ones, so we're really excited about that. Go. What do you got?
Okay, so I plan on coming on here again if Jesse will have me.
No.
Yes, because I'm his mom. But anyways, my thing is, what intrigues me the most is how people could kill children. Okay? I just,
Got a little taste of that today so far.
yeah, it's just like, okay, what possesses someone, And even worse than that, a parent that kills their children.
Right.
So I am going to talk to you about the woman named Susan Smith.
I already don't like her.
Yeah. In 1994, Susan Smith was 23 years old, single mom, living alone with her 2 little boys. Michael was 3 and Alex was 13 months. They lived in South Carolina, little town. She'd been separated from her husband, Michael, for several months. But they successfully co-parented their children, and people said they were awesome at parenting.
It was the classic, I would have never thought it was them.
Thought of that. Yeah, no. Susan had a pretty bad childhood, though. She was the youngest of 3 and the only daughter. Following her parents' divorce, her father committed suicide. So, that could mess any kid up. Her mother quickly, very quickly, like just a few months afterwards, remarried another man. And then stepdaddy sexually assaulted her.
So this is her younger life.
Yes,
Okay.
this is, yeah.
Okay.
As a teenager, she was a good student, though, well-liked, outgoing. She was voted president of her junior savant club. She did a lot of volunteering in the community. She received the Friendliest Female Award and was known cheerful and had a great disposition.
She was one friendly female, you
She
say.
absolutely was.
Lovely.
During her senior year, she was sexually active with numerous men. A married older man that she worked with and 2 schoolmates. And Susan became pregnant.
Party.
Yeah, that's what happens. The married man ended the relationship and she had an abortion. She attempted to commit suicide, taking a combination of aspirin and Tylenol. She just, the man broke her heart. She had an abortion. Blah, blah, blah. Crazy girl. But shortly after her suicide attempt, she started another relationship with a coworker and a former high school friend, David Smith. David ended his engagement that he had with another woman to be with Susan. And they got married
She was the pick of the litter, huh?
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Sounds like it.
They got married March 15th, 1991. Surprisingly, soon after their marriage, Susan found out she was pregnant.
Oh, no.
Oh no, a baby's on the way. On October 10th, 1991, Susan and David's first son, Michael, was born. David and Susan were perfect parents, showered him with love and attention. But having a child would not help their differences the newlywed had. Their relationship was on and off again. Until November 1992, when Susan announced, "I'm pregnant!"
Yay!
Again.
Rejoice!
And during her pregnancy, they did not get along. Made it harder. Alexander was born August of 1993. Shortly after his birth, David and Susan officially ended their marriage. All accounts say David and Susan, like I said, were attentive and caring parents who seemed to enjoy their children and co-parented well together.
Take note, non-good co-parenters.
Yeah.
Or maybe don't take note. This doesn't end well.
No, it doesn't. In January of 1994, Tom Finland began dating Susan. Tom was Susan's boss's son. I don't think you should miss business with pleasure. But in September, Susan was planning their future together in her mind. Tom, on the other hand, was trying to figure out how to end his relationship with Susan.
She sounds pretty undesirable.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, come on.
Sounds like a lot of people are like, oh shit.
Yeah,
Gotta get down to this.
Yeah. October 17th, 1994, just days before David and Susan's divorce papers were filed, Tom sent Susan a Dear John letter. His reasoning for wanting to end the relationship included the differences in their background. He also wanted no children, and he did not want to be a stepfather.
Clayton, that's the old school breakup through text.
What?
Yeah, a Dear John letter. That's like, yeah.
I'm breaking up with you.
On October 25th, 1994, 1 week after Tom 7 days, broke the relationship off with Susan, she spent the day obsessing over the relationship. As the day progressed, she became increasingly upset and asked to leave work early. Around 8 p.m., Susan put her 2 sons in the car, strapped them in their car seat, and began driving. Susan ended up at the John D. Long Lake and drove onto the ramp, got out of the car, put the car in drive, released the brake, and watched the car with her children sleeping in the back seat plunge into the lake. The car drifted out, then slowly sank.
Motherfucker.
While Susan Smith stood there and watched. So what does a good mother do? Try to save her children because she realized she just effed up? Nope. Susan then ran to a nearby home and hysterically banged on the door. "Let me in!" She told the homeowners that a black man had taken her car and her 2 boys were still in the back seat. She described how she had stopped at the red light when the man with the gun jumped in the car and told her to drive. She drove around some and then he told her to get out. So she got out of the car. I'm not leaving my kids though. That lady's crazy. Then at one point, he would drop the boys off and they would be safe, is what she was telling. She said as he drove away, she could hear her boys crying in the background. For 9 long, grueling days, Susan stuck to her story of her sons being abducted. Friends and family surrounded and supported her. David had returned to Susan's side as they searched for their children. The kidnapping made national news as a tragic story of boys abducted circulated. Susan in tears and David looking desperate made a public plea for safe returns of their son. In the meantime, Susan's story was unraveling.
What year is it again?
1994.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty big deal that it goes national in 94. Do you remember it?
Oh, absolutely. I followed it. Yeah. Yeah. It
As a kidnapping, did you feel bad for her?
I did. I mean, you look at this mom who, some dude walks up and, takes your car and takes your kids and,
Right.
Dude, just drop them off on the sidewalk.
You
could
never
have the
felt
car.
fishy or you...
I always
She
feel
played
fishy
it
about
well?
people. I always feel fishy about people. And, in the back of your mind, you're always thinking, could she do that? But as young as she was, I thought, no,
She's
someone...
like 23,
yeah,
24?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I just...
Go on.
But I don't know. But from the start, detectives doubted Susan's story because detectives know a BSer. Investigators started to search the nearby lakes and ponds where their initial searches did not turn up the car. After the boys were missing for 2 days, Susan and her estranged husband, David, were subjected to polygraph test. In her confession, she did state that she wanted to die and was headed to her mother's house, but decided against it. Instead, she drove to John D. Lake. I don't know. Investigators started to search the nearby lakes and ponds. And like I said, they didn't find the car because they believed the car would only be 30 feet out. The car was actually 60 feet from the shore.
So it got out there.
It got pretty far out. So, I mean, I don't know why they thought it would only be 30 feet out and didn't search any further.
Interesting.
Yeah, but on the second day of the investigation, the police suspected that she knew where the boys were, and they hoped that, they were alive and she would tell them. Susan and David were also subjected to polygraph tests, like I said, and David's polygraph came back fine. Susan's results were, of course, inconclusive. Throughout the 9 days of the investigation, Susan was given numerous polygraphs and questioned about her inconsistencies in her carjacking. The biggest breakthrough of the case came when Susan described the carjacking location. Susan said the traffic light had turned red, causing her to stop at an empty intersection.
But
However,
there's no red light there.
there is a red light, but it's monitored. So another car would have had to been there.
Oh, I
it was
see.
a censored
I
one.
remember something like that about it.
So they said, well, there was no other car there, and it's not it's censored, so no. I mean, right there was the biggest flag that I guess the cops had, and something as small as that, people don't think about that. But for 9 days, she made her pleas for safe returns of her little boys. People around her noticed her displaying questionable behavior for a mother whose children were missing. She seemed overly concerned with how she looked in front of television cameras and at times asked about the whereabouts of her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend, Tom. She had a dramatic moment of deep sobbing on TV, but when she looked at the camera, her eyes were dry and tearless. On November 3rd, 1994, David and Susan appeared on CBS This Morning, and David said he supported Susan and her story about the abduction 100%. After the interview, Susan met...
Dumb.
Yeah. I mean, I guess because they were co-parenting so well that, he didn't think she would do anything like that. But after they went on TV, she met with Sheriff Wells for another interrogation. This time, however, Wells was direct and told her that he did not believe her story about the carjacking. He explained about the light, say it should have been green, the discrepancies in her story that she had made in the past 9 days. Well, I guess that was enough to break her. Emotionally, exhausted, drained, Susan asked Wells to pray with her. And then afterwards, she began crying and telling him how ashamed she felt for what she had done. Her confession to push the car into the lake began to spill out. She said she had wanted to kill herself. But in the end, she got out of the cars and let the boys die.
Stupid bitch.
Yeah. Before the news broke of the confession, Sheriff Wells wanted to locate the bodies of the boys because they hadn't found the car at this time yet because
They just knew about
yeah.
where it was.
Well, at this point they didn't know because they'd only searched 30 feet out. They didn't know it was in the water.
Right.
So they said, "Where is the car?" And she said, "Oh, it's in the John D. Lake." And they said, "We searched it." And she pretty much directed them exactly how far out it was. So, yeah, they went to about exactly where she said, and they found it, and they pulled the car out, and the drivers turned the children over. They were not the children. The divers when they went down, the children were dangling from their car seats. One describer that he saw a little hand of a child pressed against the window. An autopsy proved that both boys were still alive when they went in the water. During the trial, Susan's defense lawyer relied highly on her childhood. You know, it was a tragedy. She was molested by her father, and, you know, she was depressed, and her real father killed himself. But the bottom line, she was outwardly normal. She wasn't. And she had some deep-seated mental illness. She had to be able to kill her babies. The prosecution showed the jury a more devious and manipulated Susan Smith, whose only concern was her own desire. Her children had become a major handicap in Susan's ability to get what she wanted. And by killing them, she would be able to be with Tom and live happily ever after. But she needed her children gone for their relationship to work.
It's an awful reason.
Yeah. I mean, give them to the dad and just say, "Look, here you go, David. I want nothing to do with the kids. I just want to pursue a relationship with my new boyfriend, and I'm dead to them."
Yeah.
So during her trial, she was unresponsive, you know. When her sons were mentioned, she would lead into sobbing, which just made it look even more fake. And she was in disbelief that the boys were dead, which I have no idea how that happens. But it only took the jurors 2.5 hours to find her guilty on 2 counts of murder.
Good.
This was so long ago that she will be up for parole in 2025.
Wow.
Yeah. She's 53. David is sworn to attend every parole hearing to try to keep her in jail forever.
Yeah. Good call,
now,
David.
This girl, she's a little crazy because since her incarceration, the South Carolina Institute, 2 guards have been punished for having sex with Susan. And they know this because they got STDs. Yeah. Well, she got the STD, and it was from them.
In prison.
But little Michael and Alex were buried together in the same casket on November 6th, 1994. And what's weird is the John D. Lake, where she had pushed her car into the water, became like a tourist attraction. People would come and I guess just
people
mourn
love
them.
morbid things.
Yeah, they do. So families would go and, you know, people would go. Well, on one day, this family of 7 went, and I guess not paying attention, their car was swept out to sea and they all died.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it's just like,
it's cursed.
yeah,
That's
that's a definitely cursed spot. So
Wow.
hopefully, you know, she does not get out in 2025.
She's not OJ. I don't think anyone's gonna want her out.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason for her winning.
I don't think for her
Being get
first time up, they should let anyone out when they do something that.
Yeah, it's surprising to me that, I mean, 94 to 2025, what's that? 30, I guess that is like 40 years without parole.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's 31 years.
30, yeah. Still not long enough.
Yeah, I mean, she was probably sentenced to like life with possibility of parole
Yeah.
after 30 years or
Yeah.
something like that. Well, anything else?
No.
Cool. Well. Nice story.
Wasn't nice, but
Well, I mean, it's proper to the show.
proper to the show. That's my segue.
So we'll just get right back into it. This is just a few months after Anna in 1979. He's now 34 years old. Dennis graduates from Wichita State University. I've got multiple choice for you, but if you'd like to stab, what degree does he graduate with in 1979?
I'll do multiple choice.
Multiple choice, please.
Okay, is it a BA in Administration of Justice? Is it a BS in Earth Sciences? Is it a theology degree? Or does he get a vocational training certificate from Wichita State University? You guys need those again?
No, I got mine.
Okay, let's see what you guys got.
I'm probably
Clayton is saying Earth Sciences. Shai is saying vocational training certificate.
He's so smart,
In
though.
79, he graduates Wichita State University with a BA in Administration of Justice. That's
Yeah.
right. It seemed too on the nose that
It
a
just-
serial killer would have a
Well, I'm sitting here thinking, as I wrote D down,
D down.
I'm just thinking that he was such a smart guy that he probably got, not just a certificate of some stupid thing, but...
So just after his graduation, later that June, his daughter Carrie is born. In April of 85, we're skipping 6 years here. So
He didn't do anything for 6 years.
it was longer, I believe. So in 79 was the Mist with Anna. So his last official killing, I want to say, was of Nancy Fox. So that would have been 77.
Oh.
So we're skipping all the way ahead to 85, I believe. Yep.
So 8 years.
April of 85. He's 40 years old now. Maureen Hedge is a 53-year-old woman. She is abducted from her home in Park City, a few doors down from Rader's home. During his confession, he mentions that he knew her as neighbors. They would wave and
The cordial
exchange
thing.
pleasantries as neighbors, right? He broke into her home and waited for her to arrive. He cut the telephone line, but she didn't notice when she returned home. She had a male friend who stayed for a few hours, but BTK was patient. He waited until the visitor left and Maureen had completely fallen asleep. He then flipped on the lights of the bathroom in her bedroom, and it woke her up, and she kind of sat up and looked. And then the big thing about BTK is that he never wore a mask. It's kind of his thing, so he didn't want to be... She probably knew who was in there, and so he jumped on the bed and strangled her.
Okay, so I wonder if, the whole time he's in the closet waiting, if he's yeah, I'm gonna get, and it's just building up in him.
I don't know, or is he just in there super calm and ultra calculated?
Yeah,
there's no telling.
I'd
but
love to know
he's
that.
definitely in there and just for hours waiting. So he jumps on the bed and he manually strangles her. He then removes all of the clothes and binds her in his way. Wraps her up in a blanket, throws her in the trunk of his car, and takes it to his church. So he is now he's got a key to the church essentially now. He's not the head honcho, but he's part of it. He's in it. So he moves the body to the church, where he takes some Polaroids of the nude bonded body, and then takes it and dumps it into a ditch. So
wow, that's totally different than his other.
Yeah, the body of Maureen Hedge is found in a roadside ditch on May 5th, 1985. She had been strangled by Rader and moved to hide her body, and he put it in the low-lying ditch and just covered her with sticks and leaves. This was his only murder outside of Wichita in Park City. So he lived in Park City. Okay. He goes into Wichita to do his murders. September 16th, 1986... he's 41 now. Vicky Wegerly is found strangled in her home. Her older child was at school. Her husband was at work. She was bound, tortured, and killed. Question number 7. What did Dennis disguise himself as to gain entry? You can stab for 1,000, or you can take the multiple choice.
Multiple choice, please.
Yeah, I'll go multiple choice.
Did he disguise himself as a traveling salesman, a utility worker, a phone company repairman, or once again, a plumber? Salesman, utility worker, phone company repairman, plumber.
You go first, Clayton.
Clayton is saying C, a phone company repairman. Shy is saying C, a phone company repairman. You guys using some context clues from earlier to gain the correct answer, and each 250 points.
I was thinking because he'd be like, "Oh, ma'am, listen, pick your phone up. It's not working. I have to fix it."
That's kind of exactly what he does. So we're looking at 1,500 apiece with 4 questions to go. Who knows? Yeah. So her husband's at work. Her older child is at home. She has a 2-year-old with her at the time. Police initially did not believe she was a victim of BTK, so they focused.
Why did they think that? Did they say?
They didn't, but they fully did not think that she was. And I think the big thing is that he's been dormant for 9 years now. So,
okay.
Vicky Waggerly was only 4 months after Marine Hedge, but Marine Hedge was so different from his killings
His previous.
that it didn't really click, I don't think. So, her son, the 2-year-old son that was home with her, we'll just get it out of the way now, is completely unharmed in all of this. They focus all the attention on the husband as the main suspect, as most cases do when there's a murder of a significant other. Usually the husband or wife of that dead person is the first person you look at, right? So the husband's sister in the documentary, one of the documentaries that I watched, mentions that she went to talk, like she wanted to talk to the kids, and she asked, "Did daddy hurt mommy?" And they said, "No, mommy hurt a man." So the baby said that essentially what they gathered was that she put up a fight against him, and that she may have hurt Dennis in the scuffle. And it was another one where Dennis got a little flustered and he killed her and got out of there. He didn't really he would have preferred probably to even kill the 2-year-old. Yeah. So essentially that becomes sort of the belief is that that's that, but it's always in the back of even the family's mind that, like, is their son, brother, uncle, is he capable? Did he kill his wife? In October, on Halloween actually, of 1987, 3 members of the Frazier family were found bound and strangled in their residence. Soon afterwards, Mary Frazier received a letter thought to be from BTK. It said that he had not committed the murders, but he did admire the work.
So he didn't do those.
He's claiming that he didn't, which I tend to believe him because I don't know why he would brag about the other
stuff. Yeah,
but he kind of rubbed in her face like, I do admire the work that took place. So in 1989, Dennis gets some random job. This does not have multiple choice. You have to guess what this random ass job is. It is for 1,000 points.
Oh my God.
I didn't think anybody was going to get it. So Clayton wants to write it down. I'm not going to give it. Yeah, if you want to write it down. So just write down some random job you think he may have gotten. If Clayton knows him well, he might be confused because he does have like 7 jobs from here on out for the rest of his life. But this is one of the random ones. So think about all those jobs, Clayton. And Shy, just think random, I guess.
I did. I went random.
Okay.
This is the one I remember.
Okay, Clayton says animal control. Shy says a plumber. So he was an animal control, but not at this time. The random job he gets in 1989 is collecting information for the United States Census Bureau.
Oh my God. Perfect job because he gets to go door to door.
Door to door, collecting info for the census. In 1990, he's going to be employed as a compliance supervisor for Park City, Kansas. So what this is he's essentially the guy that goes and tells you your grass is too long and writes you a ticket. He tells you your fence is falling over. He writes you a ticket. He's that guy. And he took his job very seriously.
Oh, I can imagine that.
Yeah, so he went out there and he definitely abused the power. On January 19th, 1991, he is now 45 years old. I wanted to do this one how I did the others, but I kind of wanted to... I did it a little differently. The judge, in his confession, asks Dennis about this day, so I'm just going to read the quote. He says, "On that particular day, I had some commitments. I left those and went to one place, changed my clothes, went to another place, parked my car, and finally made arrangements on my hit kit. Changed my clothes and then walked to that residence. After spending some time at the residence, it was very cold that night. I had reservations about going in, but I had cased the place before, and I really couldn't figure out how to get in, and she was in the house. So I finally just selected a concrete block and threw it through a plate glass window on the east and came on in. So he claims Dolores came out of her bedroom thinking that a car had ran through the door. I mean, can you imagine that'd be so
Yeah.
loud? He threw a cinder block through a sliding glass window.
It's going to scare the crap out of you.
Once she was out, Dennis tells her that he was a fugitive and needed some water and warmth and her car. He handcuffs her and let her know that she was okay, reassured her for some time, let her think that he was leaving her alone, and faked. So he puts her in handcuffs, sits her at the kitchen table, says, "Don't move," starts going through the house looking like he's collecting some supplies, and he said that he's simulating it, is what he tells the judge. So he's walking around the house and letting her think that she's going to be fine, she's leaving her alone, picks up all the things he needs, and eventually returns and manually strangles her. The body of Dolores Davis, who is 62, is found under a bridge a few blocks from her home. I don't understand, and it's got. I mean, I'm glad that I don't understand, but it's this lulling them into a false sense of security that just really.
Well, it's that, and now why is he taking them out of their home?
I kind of wondered that myself too, but I think it might just be in that he seemed to be a serial killer who studied serial killers. So I think he knew that a change in MO might be a good move, keep him off a scent, and it seems to have. After that murder, he. Not a whole lot of action. That's in 91. So in 96, he gets appointed to Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals and Sedgwick County Animal Control Advisory Board. So he gets this kind of like all-seeing position where they still kind of do people's zoning appeals for people when people pull permits and they have zoning. He's that guy now. He does that and he does the animal control. A lot of people had complaints about him as animal control. Like he would take people's dogs and he would tell them like, come pick them up on Monday. And by the time they'd come to pick them up, he'd have already euthanized them. No. Yeah. So it says in 1998, he was accused of possibly tranquilizing his neighbor, Barbara Walters' dog.
But when I first read about this, the people he killed were whatever to me, but that's the only real part that bothered me was the euthanizing the dogs.
For no reason. Like they would be...
Are you a psychopath?
A lot of people feel that way. It's,
I don't know the people, but dogs, right. You can't... Every dog's the same.
Every dog.
Yeah.
So in 1998, Misty King reported that Rader was very helpful with her in a difficult time of her life while her husband was hospitalized. She and her husband gets out of the hospital and they had a rough time and they get a divorce, and that Dennis would come and check on her and make sure everything was good even after the marriage had ended. It seemed like maybe Dennis had a little bit of a crush on her because she begins dating and he begins harassing her. Rader, that is.
He did not like that.
He started to give her citations for whatever he could because of his job.
Gosh.
So essentially for 2 years from 99 to 2001, he is just harassing her in any way that he can. But he's still married. He is. In 2001, he's now 56. He notices that Misty King's dog gets out and lets her know that she could pick the dog up 2 days from then. When she goes to the pound, she finds out that Dennis had already euthanized her dog. On March 19th, 2004, BTK sends a letter to the Wichita Eagle claiming responsibility for the September 16th, 1986 murder of Vicki Wegerle. The return name on his letter is Bill Thomas Killman, the initials BTK. Okay. In the letter, he includes a photocopy of Vicki's driver's license and 3 photos of the body that he took.
Oh, with the Polaroid.
Mm-hmm. So I should...
Polaroids, are those the ones that come out instantly? Do you have to get the... Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'd like to point out he's done killing. We're not going to hear about any more killings. He's a 59-year-old man at this point. I'm not sure that he's even capable. But he starts to get bored. So we're going to kind of go over. I thought the first letters were kind of cool. He just starts sending letters.
So what was his total count? How many did he kill?
We'll get there.
Okay.
So he sends a letter to the Wichita Eagle claiming responsibility for Vicki Wegerle's murder. The BTK return address in May of 2004, another letter from BTK arrives at the local Wichita television station, Cake TV again. In June, another letter was found in the drop box of a local library. In July, a package from BTK was found in the Wichita library. So all of these are just him sort of being braggadocious about his kills, giving details that only he would know, saying like, where's my attention? Like, don't forget me. Like the BTK killer is still out here, y'all. In October of 2004, and we're talking 2004. This is not, he's still rolling. A letter is discovered at the Wichita Shopping Center from BTK on the 30th anniversary of his first communications.
Oh.
On December 14th, 2004, a man found a plastic bag in Murdoch Park that had Nancy Fox's license along with a letter telling details unknown to the public about Nancy's death. It also contained a Barbie doll with a gag and binds on. In February of 2005, he is serving as president of Christ Lutheran Church Congressional Council. He's also working as a Cub Scout leader. In February of 16, he's at like he sends a letter as BTK to the police, essentially asking like, if I send you a floppy disk, can you track me? And the police say, like, of course not. How are we going to track a floppy disk? It's 2005, not 3005. Obviously, they could totally do that. So he sends a manila envelope with computer disk and other items to KSAS TV station and to police. The police take this disk and are able to get information that it is from Christ Lutheran Church and from a man named Dennis. They went to the church's website and found that the church president was a man named Dennis Rader.
Bum, 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 bum.
Right.
Typical. I mean, Cub Scouts and church leader.
That's what I was saying. Both of those professions have a lot of people that aren't stand-up guys.
The best.
Yeah. So we're going to take another break right here, come back with Clay's story, and finish up with BTK.
I'm Hannah.
I'm Suruti.
And we are Red Handed,
the podcast that jumps headfirst into all manner of macabre madness.
with thoroughly inappropriate enthusiasm.
We cover everything from big-time serial killers
And those you may never have heard of.
to hauntings,
Possessions.
disturbing mysteries,
Bizarre whodunits.
and basically anything that tickles our creepy fancy.
Follow us on everything at Red Handed the Pod.
And listen now on Stitcher and iTunes.
So join us.
And prepare for scares.
All right, welcome back. We are in the final leg. We are ready for Clayton's story, and I'm interested. I'm very interested in this one, and I can't wait to hear what you got. Clayton, take it away.
All right, so my story is about the Foxcatcher Farm, which was a wrestling community set up by John Dupont, the heir to the Dupont family fortune, the paint, Jeff Gordon.
Jeff Gordon's main sponsor. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And this guy Dupont grew up in kind of a bizarre lifestyle. Super rich, obviously. His mom, he didn't really his mom wasn't really there a lot, and he would have to actually set up appointments to see his dad.
Well, was his dad a doctor or a psychologist?
Just I don't know.
That was just
a
the
mogul.
deal?
He's a mogul.
Do you want to
have
see
time
me?
for
Do I
a
have
child.
a 7:30 available, Victoria?
Yeah, and he was actually raised being fed and changed by his maid until he was 13.
Hand fed?
Yeah.
Spoon fed by the maid?
Clothing.
So obviously socially he's kind of weird.
Right.
He's kind of a bizarre guy. And there wasn't really a whole lot more information up until the Foxcatcher stuff started, but he lived on this farm called Foxcatcher Farm, which was opened a long time ago, like the 1700s, whenever his family...
It was literally like where they used to have fox hunting parties, right?
Yeah.
Where they mounted horses and chased foxes
Yeah.
through the forest, right?
Yeah. And he lived there, and when he was like 50 or so, he started getting really involved with wrestling and really involved in sports because he started getting super interested in it. So he built this elaborate gym and just elaborate training facility for like top athletes to come so they could join his wrestling community and try to, conquer the world with it.
So we got Channing Tatum.
Yeah, I
and,
got Channing Tatum and Mark Ruffalo. And they got in there. And those weren't the first guys in there, though. Mark Schultz took a little bit of convincing. Mark and Dave Schultz took a little bit of convincing to get into the Foxcatcher team, but eventually they did, and they had a star-studded, wrestling team, and they would win at every competition they would go except for Russia. So
the Russians.
Yeah, because they were the only country that we were in the Cold War with them too. So
I was gonna say, wasn't this the 80s too?
Yeah,
perfect.
And that was the only country where that team, that was their livelihood. Like in America, we would, the players also had lives and families and stuff, but no, they cared about wrestling.
Do not come home to the motherland if you lose this competition.
Yeah. And their big break in that was having a Bulgarian wrestler move in with them, Valentin Yordanov. And, God, I can't remember if it was Mark or Dave, but they were both brothers. So
yeah.
I think it was Dave Schultz. He started getting really close with Valentin because he spoke Russian, and John started getting really jealous of that. He started getting really jealous of their dynamic, and he wanted like Dave all to himself. So he started try to learn Russian, and it just didn't go well. He wasn't able to do it. He started wrestling for his own team for like a older division, and just because he was raised, everything being handed to him, he just expected to win all the time.
He's like 60 at this point, right?
Yeah, super old.
Yeah.
But he was wrestling other old people.
Right.
But still, he didn't know how to wrestle.
Yeah.
So during a lot of that time, while they were training with John, they would let him win and stuff like that. So every time he would go on to actually compete, he would lose almost every single time, unless the other team let him win, because he was putting so much money into wrestling.
Yeah, that it was like even good for the other team to see him win.
Yeah. So by this point in John's life, he was starting to get a little paranoid. He was starting to like take videos of like,
isn't it like everything?
Yeah, like take videos of just everything for like
hours
6
of
hours.
It, right? Yeah.
And just he would have people come into his living room, just, do you see that? Do you like play the videos? Do you see that light right there? And they'd be like, yeah, John, yeah, I see that. Just, what is that?
Because he had a bunch of yes men around him his whole life, right?
Just super rich. And he just started to get super paranoid. He had the police liked him because he pumped a lot of money into the police, and they would come and firearm train. I was
going to say, wasn't that his thing? He had like a super advanced weapons collection. And didn't he have a tank?
I don't know about the tank, but I know he had just a bunch of weird firearms that he would just like walk around with. And so people that lived there started noticing that this dude's a little weird. And every time they would call the police to say anything, they'd be like, oh, that's just John. That's just him being John. So the police never took anything seriously. And then he started trying to kick people out of the Foxcatcher farm. Anyone except the Schultzes. He started kicking out people, and he had built homes for all these people on his property. He had built their own homes. And on one occasion, I can't remember the guy's name, but he actually threw a Molotov cocktail into his house and burned the house down. Like while the guy was gone. He didn't. I don't know if he knew the guy was gone, but
he knew that he was going to burn that house down.
Yeah,
that's what he was fucking doing.
And then the next day he was there, and then another guy, he just parked a U-Haul in front of his house. Kind of a message, just
time to move on, buddy.
Yeah, but the guy stayed there until John held him at gunpoint and told him, "All right, it's time to go."
Wow.
And things are starting to get a little tense. Obviously, people are noticing, all right, this guy's kind of weird. I'm going to move. And people started leaving the Foxcatcher team. And then Valentin started noticing that John was becoming more kind of like obsessed with Dave Schultz. Kind of like always keeping an eye on him.
Unhealthily obsessed.
Yeah, like filming his house and stuff like this. And towards the end of it, one snowy morning while his kids were out playing, John Dupont pulled up to Dave Schultz's house and shot him in the stomach. And
like out front playing with his kids, right? He's like out there like ha 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 ha.
In front of his kids?
Yeah.
And John Dupont walks up, a very trusted man to him, right? At this time. He probably knows he's a little weird, but still very...
What's up, John?
Yeah.
And then shoots him in the stomach. And he bled out to death. And then they called the police and told him, hey, he finally killed someone. So they go out there, and John, at this point, had built a huge escape room into his mansion. Just like a 2-foot-inch thick steel vault door. And the police tried to contact him, and the first night, he said, no, I'm going to go to bed. And they couldn't do anything. So he went to bed. And there was a huge standoff that lasted a few days in the whole ordeal.
They like cut off his heat to get him out, right?
Yeah, they cut off his heat. Just had no one just doing anything they could to get him out of it. And he finally, I can't remember exactly how, but they finally.
It says he came out to try to fix his boiler. Like they
really...
broke his boiler and took away his heat. And it was like a freezing. I think he's in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah,
freezing
like
Pennsylvania winter. So it's just ice cold outside, and he came outside to fix his boiler, and they got him. Then there was a SWAT team hiding in the forest, it says.
And they finally got him. And the trial, I don't think it lasted too long, like a few weeks or so. And they tried to get him on insanity. His defense lawyers tried to get him on insanity, but that didn't work. And he was arrested, and I think he died just a few years ago.
Right, and that movie, I think he died right after the movie came out too.
I never even saw the movie.
I haven't seen it either. I've seen that Steve Carell looks crazy, creepy in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an insane story. And Dave Schultz, he put enough money and training into him that he became an Olympic gold medalist in '84 Olympics. He was Olympic gold.
Wow.
Yeah, like, and as far as I know, wasn't like supposed to, right? Like it was a lot to do with John Dupont helping get him where he needed to be, because like you said, pumping so much money into the sport and building a facility where you can come and practice and train every day. So we finally beat the Russians in '84 and they got all weird. And hey, all right, well shit, Clayton, you get one too.
Thank you. On the Opie and Anthony radio show, like whenever someone like bombs a joke, they'll have like a car crash sound.
Nice. I've got a couple on here. I always use this one for people's bad jokes. Let's see. All right. So, we talked about how they go to the church's website and they find a man who is president of the parish named Dennis Rader. So, interesting. Final showdown goes a little something like this. He is arrested while driving home near his driving home near Park City, between Wichita and Park City, on noon, February 25th, 2005. Before they arrested him, they used some of the semen found at the 1974 scene and test that against the DNA of his daughter before making the arrest. The DNA shows, I think she volunteered it.
Oh, because she's older by now.
Yes.
Okay.
Or they obtained it legally.
Okay, yeah.
And they unequivocally can prove that this semen is from the father of this girl. So that was kind of like, you see a scene where he's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, look, we have this semen. We
got the proof.
And your daughter, her father is BTK. What do you want to tell us? And that's where he starts to kind of like, fuck, I'm caught. Yeah. After, 40 years. So
it made a pretty good run. I mean, it lasted a lot longer than.
The documentary I watched is called BTK, the most elusive serial killer. Like, really, he went 40 years, and,
and it's
a lot of
amazing
them
with all the jobs he had, and
he would have gotten away with it if he hadn't did for the meddling
letters.
Kids.
Yeah,
if he hadn't put in the letters.
So many letters too, like dozens of letters get sent out. So anyway, when he gets arrested, an officer asks him, "Mr. Rader, do you know why you're going downtown?" To which he replied, "Oh, I have suspicions why." Wichita Police, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, and the FBI and Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives agents searched Rader's home and vehicle, seizing evidence including computer equipment, a pair of black pantyhose retrieved from a shed, and a cylindrical container. The church he attended, his office at City Hall, and the main branch of the Park City Library were also searched. At a press conference the next morning, Wichita Police Chief Norman Williams announced, quote, "The bottom line, BTK is arrested." It's crazy. I actually have goosebumps right now. It literally happened. Like they're in a room, there's a huge press conference, and people just like standing up, hugging each other, cheering. Like finally some closure for people.
All those families.
Bottom line, he's arrested. So we're going to move into our legal proceedings and question number 9. How many murders will BTK be charged with? Remember, he is claiming to have committed 10. He says, I did 10. How many is he going to be charged with or heading into court? This is how many we're charging you with, BTK.
No multiple choice?
No multiple choice. Closest to the answer gets 250 points. Wait, are you doing math?
Yes.
Shy says 8. Clayton says they're going to charge him with 37. They are just going to charge him with the 10. Shy on a roll, taking the lead.
Well, because I was thinking the family of 4. No, I said the family of 4, and then the brother and sister, and then 2 of the gals. And I thought they probably,
They pulled a few out.
Yeah, just thinking we don't have enough, and if we could just get them on these, we'll just...
So Shy is up 1,750 to 1,500, Clay.
I was up 1,000 a few minutes ago.
She got that 1,000-point question. There is still 2 more questions to go, so you guys are in a spot, and both of them are closest to the answer gets 250. So if Shy wins the next question, Clayton, you're out of it. Clayton, if you win the next question, it literally comes down to the final answer.
Final question.
So, on February 28th, 2005, Rader was charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder. Soon after his arrest, the AP cited an anonymous source alleging Rader had confessed to other murders in addition to those in which he had been connected. The Sedgwick County District Attorney denied this, but refused to say whether Rader made any confessions or if investigations were looking into Rader's possible involvement in more unsolved killings. On March 5th, news sources claimed to have verified by multiple sources that Rader had confessed to the 10 murders and was charged with, but no others at all. So, question number 10. Rader has a bail set on March 1st. How much was his bail set at? The closest gets 250 points. Remember, if Shy wins this, it's all over.
But
and she
it's
has won
not,
it.
the option is not no bail. He did have an amount set.
0 could be an answer. I'm thinking if he killed 10 people, there's going to be an amount of bail they're putting on him. But if you think it's 0, that is a viable option. I am I'm charging you with 10 murders in the first degree. Your bail is set at... Drop the gavel. If Shy gets this, it's all over. If Clay gets it, it's sudden death at the last question. Shy says...
He's remanded. They're not going to let him out. He killed 10 people.
Clayton says 150,000. I have to give it to Clayton. It's $10 million bail.
I was going to say 10 million. Oh my God.
I think they have to set a bail amount.
Really? They can't just... I watch Law and Order.
Maybe I'm incorrect, but they do set his bail at $10 million.
Are you freaking kidding me?
Shy, I'm sorry. Your no guess leads to Clayton getting in it. It is 1,750 to 1,750 with one question left to go. So I can throw the score sheet away, really. It's going to be whoever gets the next one. So on March 1st, Rader's bail was set at $10 million and a public defender was appointed to represent him. Also, a little side note, as soon as his wife found out, she filed for divorce was given an expedited, it's 60 days to get an official divorce. She was given hours, automatic divorce. She is no longer married to him.
Good.
To this day, I don't believe she's okay.
Oh, God. How could you be?
Right. So, on May 3rd, the judge entered not guilty pleas on Rader's behalf, as Rader did not speak at his arraignment due to his public defender's opinion. However, on June 27th, the scheduled trial date, Rader changed his plea to guilty and described the murders in detail and made no apologies. So, I have a little clip from that, too. There's
like a whole video, isn't there?
There's 45 minutes. You can watch the entire thing. The judge asks, okay, on count 1, the Otero family, I need some more information. And he
I couldn't imagine being the
goes through
family
in
hearing
detail.
how my
Right.
loved
So
one was-
again, this is from the 90s, or no, this is actually from the early 2000s, but it's like a local news station, so it's a little buzzy, and every version of this sounds exactly the same. So this is just about a minute and a half long, but this is him just kind of giving a little bit of basic information about his crimes with the Otero family.
First of all, Mr. Otero was strangled, or a bag put over his head and strangled. Then I thought he was going down, and I went over and strangled Mrs. Otero. I thought she was down. Then I strangled Josephine. Thought she was down. And then I went over to Junior and put the bag on his head. After that, Mrs. Otero woke back up, and she was pretty upset what's going on. So I came back, and at that point in time, strangled her for the death strangle at that time.
With your hands or what?
No, with a cord, with a rope. And then I think at that point in time, I redid Mr. Otero, put the bag over his head, went over, and then to Junior. Before that, she asked me to save her son. So I actually had taken the bag off, and then I was really upset at that point in time. So basically, when Mr. Otero was down, Mrs. Otero was down, I went ahead and took Junior, I put another bag over his head and took him to the other bedroom.
I like the words you described them. They seem pretty upset.
Put a bag over his head, I put a cloth over his head, a T-shirt and a bag so he couldn't tear a hole in it. And he subsequently died from that. And then when I went back, Josephine had woke back up.
So what did you do then?
And I took her to the basement and eventually hung her.
All right, you hung her in the basement?
Yes, sir.
Did you do anything else at that time?
Yes, I had some sexual fantasies, but that was after she was hung.
He's still like, yeah, this is what I did, and yeah, I did this, and
When he talks about taking Dolores, if you ever watch the whole confession, it was almost, I hated how smug he was, but like, he's telling the story. He's like, and then I went and looked for a place to hide her body. And the judge is like, well, did you? He's like, I sure did. And it's like,
so matter of fact, like, yeah, this is what I did.
Right. So it's just very tough to be a part of.
Wow.
So let's see. At Rader's August 18th sentencing, victims' families were all allowed to make impact statements, after which Rader apologized in a rambling 30-minute monologue that the prosecutor likened to an Academy Awards acceptance speech. He was sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences. He will be eligible for parole after question number 11, closest to this answer. How long until Dennis Lynn Rader, the BTK killer, is eligible for parole? How many years? You don't have to give me a year, but there is a number on it.
How many years?
In a certain amount of years, he will be eligible for parole. The closest to this answer is going to win today. Oh, man, I am nervous for you guys. I don't know that I've ever had one come down to the final. Oh, I actually think last episode came down to the final answer. Oh, man, I'm getting some good ones going here.
Do you know this, Clay?
No.
Okay. Do you have your answer down yet? Okay, then I'm not gonna let you look at mine yet. I'm gonna say. If we go over, we still count, right?
So it's only Price is Right rules. It's only Price is Right rules. If let's say it's 10 and Clayton guessed 11 and you guessed 9, you would be the winner.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, Clay. You got your Shy?
I got mine.
Okay. How many, Clay? 770? Is that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Shy says 250. The 10 life sentences. He will be eligible for parole after. Congratulations, Shy. 175 years.
Black.
Yes. So Dennis Lynn Rader will be available.
So he got like 17 years a person.
17.5 before he's available for parole.
Yeah, well, I figured they gave him like 25. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty good. Pretty good. So in the year 2180, Dennis Lynn Rader will be eligible for parole.
You'll be dead, sucker.
At the time, Kansas had no death penalty because everybody thinks that he for sure would have been given that. On August 19th, he was moved to the El Dorado Correctional Facility. According to witnesses, Rader talked about innocuous topics such as the weather during the 40-minute drive to El Dorado, but began to cry when the victim's family statements from the court proceedings came on the radio. He is now in solitary confinement for his protection, with 1 hour of exercise per day and showers 3 times per week. This will likely continue indefinitely. At the beginning of 2006, he was allowed access to television and radio, to read magazines, and other privileges for his good behavior in prison. There was also one further investigation following his arrest. Police in Wichita, Park City, and several surrounding cities looked into unsolved cases with the cooperation of the state police and the FBI. They particularly focused on cases after 1994 when the death penalty was reinstated. So they were trying to find something to kill him. That's what it's what it sounds like. Is they were focused on one. Let's fucking get him off this earth. So the Kansas police looked in surrounding states such as Nebraska, Missouri, Colorado, Oklahoma, Texas. All cold cases that fit Rader's pattern to some extent. The FBI, Civil Air Patrol, local jurisdictions at Rader's former duty stations checked into unsolved cases during Rader's time in the service. After exhaustive investigations, none of these agencies recovered any further murders attributable to Rader, confirming early suspicions that Rader would have taken credit for any additional murders that he committed. The 10 known murders are now believed to be the only murders that Rader is actually responsible for, although Wichita police are fairly certain that Rader stalked and researched a number of other potential victims. He called them projects. This is project number 7. And he had numbers, and if it didn't work out, he'd renumber it and rename it and move on. So this included one person who was saved when Rader called off his planned attack upon his arrival near the target's home due to the presence of a construction and road crew outside her home. Rader stated in his police interview that there are, quote, a lot of lucky people, meaning that he had thought about and developed various levels of murder plans for other victims he was not able to complete.
That's so creepy.
That's pretty much it for him. There's also this evaluation by Robert Mendoza that a lot of people talk about. It was controversial, I guess. Massachusetts psychologist Robert Mendoza was hired by Rader's court-appointed public defenders to conduct a psychological evaluation for Rader and determine if an insanity defense might be viable. He conducted an interview after Rader pleaded guilty on June 27th. NBC claimed Rader knew the interview might be on TV, but this was false according to the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Department. Rader mentioned the interview during his sentencing statement. On October 25th, 2005, the Kansas Attorney General filed a petition to sue Mendoza and Tally Waters, co-owners of Cambridge Forensics Consultants, LLC, for breach of contract, claiming that they intended to benefit financially from the use of information obtained through involvement in Rader's defense. On May 10th, 2007, Mendoza settled the case for $30,000 with no admission of wrongdoing. So I have a clip of that. It's not the whole interview, but it is part of it. Let me pull it up here for you. It's kind of like the trailer to that interview, but let's see. I think it's got Katie Couric at the beginning, too.
Ooh, Katie Couric, back in the day.
Just for... All right, so this one's also not the highest of quality. Thank you, YouTube videos.
Serial murderer, the BTK killer terrorized Wichita, Kansas for 3 decades. Now, in a jailhouse interview, you'll hear directly from him how and why he committed these gruesome crimes. Here's Dateline NBC's Edie Magnus.
BTK seemed uncatchable. Everyone wondered who he was, where he was, until just a few months ago, when a most unlikely man who'd lived among them all along, Dennis Rader, was arrested.
I am BTK.
How smug he is.
So smug.
I'm the guy they're after, 100%.
This interview, obtained by Dateline after it was done, was conducted by a Harvard-trained forensic psychologist, Robert Mendoza, who performs more than 100 evaluations for criminal and civil cases each year. He was hired by the defense team to assess Rader's sanity.
I got this fantasy. I started working out this fantasy in my mind, and once that person become a fantasy, I could just loop it over. I'd lay in bed at night thinking about this person, the events and how it's going to happen, and it became a real, almost like a picture show. You know, I wanted to go ahead and produce it and direct it and go through with it, no matter what the costs were and the consequences. It was going to happen one way or another.
No one knows for sure why Rader had to kill to fulfill those fantasies. In this interview with the psychologist, Rader dismisses each victim as a project. He says he'd begin by stalking.
Stalking stage is when you start learning more about your victims, potential victims. Went to the library, I looked up their names, that address, cross-referenced, and called them a couple of times. Drove by there whenever I could.
And each time he struck, Rader said he was armed with what he calls his hit kit.
Already made up.
It contained what?
Plastic bags, rope, tape, knife, gun. All those wouldn't be in the kit. They'd be where I could have them in the house and gather them up.
Tools that would come to define the work of BTK. The victims were often discovered bound with tape or rope tied in unusual knots. In his jailhouse interview, Rader blamed his murder spree on that mysterious force he has always claimed was way beyond his control, Factor X.
Something that's, I use it, I actually think I'm maybe possessed with demons. I was dropped on my head when I was a kid. I've talked to some theological Christian people, and some of those people are really strong. They actually think, well, the Bible says that there's demons within you or can come into you. That's the only thing I can figure out. I have, something drove me to do this.
It's got to be the demons.
Normal people just don't do this.
It's not that he's just warped.
I can't stop it. It's just, it controls me. You know, it's like it's in the driver's seat.
10 innocent people murdered to satisfy the twisted needs of one selfish man.
And you can see much.
So that's, yeah.
Creepy.
Well, fortunately and unfortunately, that is all I have for you today. Thank you guys for coming out and hanging out late with me. Congratulations, Shy, on your victory. Sorry,
Thanks
Clayton, you were
so much.
so close. So close.
Yeah.
The confidence in the beginning bit you in the ass in the end, didn't it?
Fabulous story. Absolutely fabulous.
Well, thank you guys for coming. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Beer Savage. And thank you, everybody, for listening to the Serial Chillers podcast. See you next time.
Thank you.
All right, that was episode 20, and thank you guys for listening. This was a good one. I knew that I'd eventually have to get to it. BTK is huge. Anybody who really has dove into the serial killer world has definitely at least heard this name on multiple occasions, so that's one reason I really wanted to kind of get to it now. Episode 20 seemed like a good benchmark to reach, and, I wanted to get it covered. I'm glad it's out of the way. He was fucked. And he could have gotten away with it, too. He just had to be the center of attention. He had to keep sending letters. He had to keep bringing himself to the limelight as he began to fade away. So, fuck that guy. Congratulations to Shy on her win. She definitely wanted it more than Clay, who I was certain was going to run away with it when he was stoked at the beginning and knew a little too much off the top. So, Clayton could not knock it down this time. Shy gets her first win after getting beat by a replacement guest last time. Congratulations to you, Shy. Any cool stories or facts about BTK that I missed or got totally wrong, reach out to me. Tons of ways you can do that. On Facebook, you can just find me at Serial Chillers Podcast. On Instagram, it's at Serial Chillers Podcast. Twitter is at Chillers Podcast. The email address is serialchillerspodcast@gmail.com, and we have the voicemail line. You can use it, 1-805-666-2513. Remember, the show is also on YouTube now, so if you like to watch your podcasts without video but audio, yeah, please check it out on YouTube. Let everybody know. Lastly, the Patreon page is huge for us. Patreon.com/serialchillerspodcast. You can give as little as $1 a month. It really helps. The show is not free to make. It is free for you and always will be. I'm never going to charge money for this. I can't even fathom a day where I'd have to do that. But if you like what we do and you think that we deserve a little bit here at the show, please join the Patreon page and give us $1 a month. It won't kill you. If it does, I'm really sorry about that. Also, you can find me on Untapped. The beers we got into for this episode was Cloudy with a Chance of Juice. We've had it before, and another Pickle Rick. So, if I'm not mistaken, it's the same exact combo we had last week. Very delicious. Went forward again. Research for this episode came from, again, a Radford University timeline that was researched by Misty Sexton, Melissa Shaw, and Lewis Smith. Used all the sources from Wikipedia I could, and Murderpedia. Every single article on there I used, including the court transcripts. Very, very helpful this time. Watched from start to finish the entire 45-minute confession in court by BTK and all of the subsequent jailhouse interviews. I absorbed this guy this week. I don't like that I did, but I did, and I did it for you. Watched a few documentaries about BTK as well. We watched a Nova documentary called Most Elusive Serial Killer BTK from 2012 and BTK Killer from 2008. Music for this episode is brought to you by Hella Greg, the intro and the outro. Want to hear more from Hella Greg? That's soundcloud.com/Hella Greg. If you're still listening, thank you. I'm glad I got to take a week off. It helped keep things fresh, and now I feel better heading into the next 20 episodes. So, appreciate it. Keep listening, give to the Patreon, and remember, don't talk to strangers.